Hello, so we are moving on with our Chapter 7 notes. This is the beginning of Chapter 7 notes, which we covered in that previous video. But to run through it quickly, we are on supply and demand. Supply and demand only works in a market economy because it is all based on voluntary exchange. If you accept that that is true, economists do, in a market, this should work. We should have demand, and we should have the law of demand. And the law of demand should say, hey, when stuff is cheap, we'll buy more of it. And when stuff is expensive, we'll buy less of it. That's an inverse relationship. There's some sort of asterisks to that. Real income effect, substitution effect, diminishing marginal utility can impact that. But overall, demand should always slope down because in supply and demand curves, my horizontal axis should always be price. I'm sorry, my vertical axis should always be price, up and down y, and my horizontal axis, x-axis, should always be quantity. And so on the y-axis, price, the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded, and the lower the price, the higher the quantity demanded. Yeah. There's some other concepts like elasticity of demand that we also talked about. However, this is our second part of Chapter 7 notes, and this is about supply. So the first thing is the law of supply, and the law of supply is very similar, but opposite, to the law of demand. And this really just makes sense, I think, yeah? If we think about the world, this is how we probably assume the world works. Don't think about demand. Don't think about you as a consumer. And I know that's sort of hard because I think that's how we usually think about the world. I'm much more familiar and comfortable thinking about the world buying stuff in it, not producing stuff, not supplying stuff. But there are lots of suppliers in our economy, and all of us are or will be suppliers in some way too. And we'll talk about that. But anyway, what this means is if you're the one making a cup of lemonade for sale, or a Ford F-150 pickup truck, or a new house, or a stick of butter, or whatever, anything you create that you're going to sell, if you could get more and more money for that, how many of that thing will you create? So let's say if you, I don't know, harvested some leaves and got paid, less than a penny for a bag of leaves, how hard would you work raking up bags of leaves for a penny? Well, let's say I was going to pay you $5 a bag for every bag of leaves. Would you come over to my house and rake for me in the fall? What if I paid you $30 a bag? How about $300 a bag of leaves? Would you work very hard? I mean, I bet all of you guys would come over and spend hours and hours and hours until I didn't have a leaf left if I was really paying you $300 for a bag of leaves. And maybe not every single one of you, right? Maybe some of you refuse, but lots and lots of you would come. And maybe some of you would come at $10 a bag. But anyway, it's really just the exact opposite of the law of demand. The higher the prices go, the more supply is. If F-150 pickup trucks are $150,000 a piece and everyone's buying them, Ford's going to make a lot of F-150s. If lemonade is only $2, I'm not going to work very hard making lemonade. Yeah. So supply is a direct relationship between price and quantity. Lower the price, lower the supply. Higher the price, higher the supply. Why? Because of profit. So if you can sell a pickup truck for $100,000, you're going to make a lot of those because you're probably not going to have to spend that much to make that pickup truck. And so Ford will have a much higher profit. And when prices are very low, you're going to have a lower profit margin. You'll make less money. And so that dictates the law of supply. And then just like we can take points of, at various prices on my y-axis, how much is quantity on my horizontal axis, we can do that with supply, right? And that will give us a supply curve. Supply curves show us the quantities supplied at every possible price. Demand curves slope down, if you recall, and supply curves will slope up. That was really backwards because my video is weird. But anyway, you'll get it. So that's a supply curve. So the supply curve itself is shifting up. And an easy way to remember that is demand curves always slope down. A demand curve would always slope this way from top left to bottom right. It might be very steep, like inelastic demand, or very horizontal, like elastic demand. We've talked about that. But anyway, supply curves always shift up. Pretty easy, right? UP up is in the word supply. So I know a supply curve will always go up. Easy way to remember it. And then D, demand curves always slope down with a D. Also easy to remember. Just like on the demand side, I told you this, always, my vertical or y-axis is always price, no matter what. And my horizontal or x-axis is always quantity, no matter what. So we can see here, if I thought I was going to get $10 for a cup of lemonade, high prices, well, then I would supply a lot of that. So my plot point there is 10 bucks, 5 cups of lemonade supplied, high supply. If I thought I'd only get $2, well, I'm only going to work hard enough to make one. I'm not going to work very hard to come over to Schusky's house and rake leaves and put them in bags. Ford's not going to work super hard making F-150 pickup trucks if it thinks it can only get $20,000 for one. So anyway, the lower the price, the lower the supply. Then you connect those dots and hey, you have a supply curve. So this concept we really sort of already discussed and hopefully just kind of makes sense to you on the demand side as well as the supply side. But you do need to keep in mind the difference between quantity supplied and overall supply. So a change in quantity supplied is caused by a change in price. So I'm going to go backwards to that. What causes supply of lemonade to go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5? One thing, a change in one variable, this change in price. So if price goes up $2, supply goes up a cup of lemonade. If price goes down $2 from 10 to 8, quantity goes down from 5 to 4. So change in price from here to here yields a change in quantity from here to here. So in effect, that point on that line is moving up or down depending on increase or decrease in price. That's quantity supplied. What about overall supply? So overall supply is caused by something other than price. We already talked about this on the demand side. Those are called determinants. Those cause shifts, left or rightward shifts, left less, right more. And we'll talk about that in a second. We have determinants of supply, just like we had determinants of demand. Okay, so here are my determinants of supply. Price of inputs, competition, taxes, and technology. So only 4. So if you remember from the demand side, we had 5 determinants of demand: change in income, change in population, change in taste, substitutes, complements. But on the supply side, we only have 4: inputs, competition, taxes, technology. So just memorize those, I guess, or keep these notes handy or something, but we'll need to know those 4 determinants. Same exact deal, just like on the demand side. When there is more supply at any price, that's reflective of a rightward shift, more supply at any price, right, or less supply, leftward shift. Meaning, let's say the price of Coke stays the same. It's $5 for a 12-pack at Schnucks this week, and it's $5 for a 12-pack of Coke next week at Schnucks. How many 12 packs of Coke at $5 is Coca-Cola willing to supply to Schnucks, right? Like they have to sit there and make a determination how many 12 packs of Coke are we willing to ship at $5. Now that's different at $6 and that's different at $4. But at $5, if that's what Coke decides it needs to charge based on competition, demand stuff like what Pepsi's charging and so on, or other factors. Anyway, if they decide they have $5 is what they can all they can charge for a 12-pack of Coke. Well, gee, what if the price of sugar has gone up dramatically? What if there was a horrible disease that wiped out half the world's sugar crop overnight, or hurricanes, or whatever? Well, at $5, now probably Coke will end up raising the price, and we'll talk about that in a different part of this. But if Coke still thinks it can only get away with $5 12 packs, what's going to happen? They're going to supply less Coke at $5, right? They just won't ship as many 12 packs to the Collinsville Schnucks. They're going to make less Coke. They'll try to shift and make something else, maybe more Diet Coke because it didn't require sugar. Now, what about at $6? Well, they'll probably ship a few more 12 packs of Coca-Cola at $6 than they would at 5 because the law of supply still holds. It's still an upward sloping line. More supply at 6 than at 5 than at 4. But this determinant price of inputs, how much it costs, the sugar and everything else, the cost of the can, the aluminum, the water, the high fructose corn syrup, everything goes into Coca-Cola. They have to take all those price of inputs into account, and the lower those prices go, the higher their profit margin, the more they'll supply at any price. So if price of inputs goes up, supply curve shifts left, less supply at any price, less $10 12 packs supplied, less $2 12 packs supplied, and more at 10 than at 2. So still an upward sloping line, but it's shifted to the left from that first supply curve we had or looked at before there was hurricane or sugar crop wiped out, whatever it is, right? If price of inputs goes down, rightward shift in supply. Competition. If all of a sudden there's 3 more cola companies show up in the market, I'm going to have a pretty significant rightward shift of my supply. There's going to be more $10 cola around and a whole lot more or more $2 cola around, right? So no matter what, low prices, there'll be more supply. High prices, there'll be lots more supply. And I'll still have an upward sloping line, but it'll have shifted to the right with more competition. It'll shift to the left with less competition. Taxes work a lot like inputs, right? So if taxes go up, profit margin is lower, companies will make less at any price. So that's a leftward shift of supply. And if taxes decrease, companies get more profit. They're happy to provide more at any price. Let's say government eliminates soda tax. Well, do you think Coca-Cola is going to supply more or less $5 12 packs to Schnucks that week? Well, more, because gee, they hope they sell more because holy cow, now they're making more profit on each one of those 12 packs they sell. Even though it's still at $5, lower taxes, more in their pocket as profit. Hey, sure, we'll supply more of that. So a decrease in taxes is a rightward shift in supply, and increase in taxes is a leftward shift in supply. And then lastly, we have technology. Usually this only demonstrates a rightward shift. Usually there's a technological advancement that allows companies to produce goods or services cheaper. And so if their cost goes down, they'll make more of it at any price. Yeah. So be able to go through those. Remember the 4 determinants of supply: inputs, competition, taxes, technology, and think about which causes a leftward or a rightward shift in each of those. Okay. And then lastly, we have sort of a corollary, a parallel, something that goes along with on the demand side, we had law of diminishing marginal utility, right? You get sort of full. On the supply side, we have a concept called the law of diminishing returns. And this simply means, I'm just finally reading my full notes there at the bottom of the slide. Former students entered that. I apologize, although it is true. Those 2 guys are pretty cool. Anyway, I apologize. So law of diminishing returns simply says the more inputs you add on the supply side to make more stuff, the more stuff you'll make for a while, but eventually that'll like plateau off, and then it may even go down. Like if I keep adding people to an assembly line, for a while I can make more stuff on that assembly line. But if I stick too many people in there, like maybe they're getting each other's way and the elbows are bumping, maybe they actually, get distracted, whatever it is, maybe they slow down and they can't make as much. So extra output for each additional unit of input will eventually decrease my total output. Gets a little complicated, but I think it's easy if you literally just think about the physical nature of an assembly line and you want to make more trucks. Let's hire some more people, put them on that assembly line. But then, of course, you need more metal and plastic and whatever, to tires and rubber and glass to make that truck, car, whatever. And after a point, if you keep adding more always, you don't end up making as many more trucks as you want. That first person on that assembly line maybe gets you this much more supply or output, productivity. And that second person maybe only gets you this much more, and that third person this much more, and fourth this, and fifth this, and then sixth this, and seventh this, and eighth, I'm not getting anything out of that eighth person. And ninth, I actually like am slowing the production line down because the ninth additional person is just too many. So that's the concept of law of diminishing returns. So if that was clear as mud, the textbook does a pretty good job explaining that too. So anyway, as always, ask me if you have any questions, but that will conclude sort of our second chunk of our Chapter 7 notes. I'm going to break it up into 3 parts. We have covered demand already. This now concludes our supply. And so our third part of supply notes will be coming at us next, and that is supply and demand together. But hopefully supply made sense, and I'll see you next time.